This is beautiful. What is that, velvet?
Peace and love is the key.
You are now about to experience the J&J-Life podcast with your host, Reya'Sekhmet.
But my name combines Rhea, which means a connection to Ra.
J&J-Life podcast, please
Smash that like button. Peace and love is Vicky.
Abibi Fahodie and of my family. I'm Reya'Sekhmet, also known as Reya'Sekhi. Thank you for tuning into the J&J-Life podcast, where truth is currency and confusion gets no airtime. And family, don't let my age fool you, because even though I'm 9 years old, I'm conscious and African-centered. Today isn't playtime. This is nation time. And family, I am so really excited. I've been asking questions all week. And Baba Rastari said this guest could help us find answers that protect our minds and our story. So family, we're sitting with a giant today, and we are honored to welcome a visionary author and cultural defender. He's another one of our truth tellers, a warrior scholar, family man, and master teacher. As I always say, family, this conversation is for warriors, for builders, and for those ready to stand tall against misinformation, and for those ready to receive instructions and truth unapologetically. And peace to Baba Emalim Baruti, Baba Mku Mz, Baba Takak Manjao, and Baba Batu Shikari. So family, this is nation business, and without further ado, please welcome Baba Olatunji and Mwamba to the show. How are you doing on this fantastic day?
I am well. I'm thankful and honored to be here and to have a discussion with such a lovely, intelligent, and wise young lady as yourself.
I say.
Well, I share that. Baba Rastari, how's it going for you today?
Dua Reya'Sekhi, and all is well. And family, as we always do, I want to give reverence to the ancestors and the elders for all they have done and are doing. I also want to give a special shout out to all of the J&J Ma'atians listening as well. And family, as Reya'Sekhi has already pointed out, this discussion is truly unique. And we here on the J&J-Life podcast do not claim to be experts on every aspect of homosexuality, LGBTQIA+, or sexuality for that matter. But we actually approach this topic and all other of our discussions as students of information, open to correction if necessary. And we are committed to learning with integrity from an African-centered perspective. Our intention is simple: to represent this knowledge well, with clarity, respect, and responsibility. And I do want to say, Baba, and that is, we here on the J&J-Life podcast take the position of students today. And we sit in a master class with you being the master teacher, warrior scholar. So buckle up, family. We are not only honored about what we believe in, we are guided by the principles of Ma'at. We do Ma'at. Facts, truth, justice, balance, harmony, order and arrangement, reciprocity, and righteousness. And as Reya'Sekhmet has said, this conversation is for those who study deeply, remember fiercely, and build without apology.
Well, Ashe, the conscious song has striked again. So let's begin. Baba Olatunji, before we go any further, with you being the elder in the room, may I have permission to speak?
Yes.
Ashe. So, Baba, will you share with the family about your background, like where you grew up or where you were born, education, and let us into how you ultimately became the person you are today, and what made you want to do this work for our people?
Well, I was born and raised in Baltimore City, Maryland. Born in June 7th, 1954, in fact. When I became a teenager, I became more politically aware of things that were going on around me. Probably started paying attention to what was going on when I was about maybe 13, 14 years of age, probably around 1967, 68. And music was always a big influence on me as I started a singing group with my friend and his wife. when I was 16 in 1970. And during that process, there was a lot of social commentary in many of the songs that we were singing. Not all of them, but a lot of the songs. And then I'm paying attention to what was going on in the world. In '68, Martin Luther King had been assassinated. So it's just a lot of things going on. And so as I can continue to grow as a man, I'm paying more and more attention. Educational wise, I don't have a college formal education. The one thing that I have never done and would not do today is, try to deceive anybody into thinking that I have this great master's degree or doctorate degree or anything of that sort. I'm what they call an autodidact. I'm self-taught, and I consistently use the research methodology of, being as consistent, providing honesty and integrity with everything that I do my research in. Formal education, in terms of I listed, I have a high school, completed high school, and I have about a year and a half of college. So that's my educational background. Became conscious when I was 20 years old in 1974, at the age of 20. And that's when I met my Jegna. His name was Bilal Opio Abba, who was one of the wisest brothers I ever knew. I had I would say the groundwork was laid by my father, who was what I call a Muslim sympathizer, and who was a stickler about the importance of knowing the meanings of words. And it's through his consistent urgings of making sure I understood the meanings of words, along with a 7th grade teacher I had when I was 13, who was also important in that. That's kind of like the foundation for making sure that I know the meanings of the words that I use. And then in the summer of 1974, when I became 20, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And one of the things amongst the many that stood out about Brother Malcolm for me was that he said that while in prison, he memorized the entire dictionary, and he talked about the importance of knowing the meaning of words. It's through that process that I fully became aware of why those other lessons that I had gotten, first from my father and then from my 7th grade teacher, that laid the groundwork for me understanding what Malcolm talked about. From that moment on, I've always applied that principle of learning with everything else I've done. So I just continue to read. I converted to Islam early, took my what they call Kalima Shahada in 1974, December. Even rising to the position of imam of one of the local masjids in Baltimore, led that congregation of Muslims for about 3.5 years before I stepped down. And meanwhile, I was studying diligently African history and culture. At the same time, I was studying all of the tenets and the origin of Islam and all of that. And so it just kind of like, as I grew more and more and more, I realized some things about Islam that no longer held sway for me. And so I eventually walked away from Islam, and I no longer practice that religion at all. That's for me. Through my research, I know that Islam is not an indigenous African religion, even though it might possess elements of African spiritual concepts. It in and of itself is not an African religion. And the original Arabs were not and are not Black people. So these are things that I know. So that's a part of it. I don't want to take up too much time on it, but that's essentially it. And then I just started reading all kinds of books. I list a lot of the people who were influential to me in the opening part of my book, there are others, but those are some of the most important ones that I listed. And I've read most, if not all, of their works. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Shay, so Baba, to be clear, did you always know you were supposed to speak out?
Did I know I was always supposed to be what?
Did you know that you were always supposed to speak out?
No. It's one of those things where you just start doing what you're doing, and it just if it well, for me, it just became a passion. I saw that I was learning and learning things that I wanted to share with my people. I wanted my people to learn and know what I knew. And it's through my love for my people that made me become what I am today.
So, Baba Olatunji, I'm studying your book, An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQ plus organizations and their agenda, the conversation that nobody wants to have.
Right.
With my Nana Mu and Baba Rasar, I read the data, the definitions, and the distortions. And even though I'm only 9 years old, I've come to know that what many people call homosexuality today is often a mix of human confusion and cultural trauma. And I've come to know it's not biology, not destiny, and definitely not African tradition. In chapter 1 of your book, you break it down with no hesitation. You show how the term homosexuality was created in the late 18s, how it was never part of an indigenous African languages, and how it's been used to normalize behavior that was once seen as deviant, especially in colonial and Western societies. But I've also known that many of our listeners, especially the youth, may not have heard this before, as they may be or been taught to accept labels without questioning the source. Or they may have been told that identity is behavior and that confusion is freedom. So for the sake of our clarity, for the sake of our children, and for the sake of our cultural restoration, Baba, I ask you plainly, what is homosexuality? And then please break it down the terms heterosexual and straight, and which one do we choose? So go ahead, Baba, break it down for the family.
Well, homosexuality is the idea, it is the idea and the behavior of an individual who, if they are male, wants to have what we call conjugal sexual relations with someone of the same sex/gender that they are. If they are female, they want to have sex with a female. If they're male, they want to have sex with a male. The term heterosexuality, both the term homosexuality and the term homosexuality, that term was created by, both terms were created by this gentleman named Carl Marie Kirkbenny. He created first homosexuality, the term homosexuality, in 1868, and created the term heterosexuality the following year in 1869. He defined heterosexuality as being abnormal. We go further to 1901, and another writer, a medical doctor named Dorland. I can't remember his first name right now. It's just for whatever reason, but he has a dictionary called Dorland's Medical Dictionary, and in it he says he defined homosexuality. He crystallized it and defines homosexuality as abnormal or perverted sex with the perverted sexual appetite for the opposite sex. So, and this is consistent because what you see from this definition is that what he is saying is that having sex and/or conjugal relations with the opposite sex, which is actually designed by nature and in and of itself is somehow abnormal, which is insane, because you need opposites, as we say in ancient Kemet, the duality of opposites. You need the complementarity of male and female to produce more children and to reproduce ourselves, in other words. So it is, his definition is really insane in when we look at it from an objective point of view, by saying that it's abnormal for me myself to have sex with my wife. That's abnormal, perverted sexual behavior. That's crazy to me. Because that's what I'm supposed to do. Because that's what's going to reproduce more of the human species is to have sex. So that's insane to me. Mm-hmm. So in defining that that term, we look at you and you can see the inconsistency and the failings of it. And so what I did was, in looking at the origin of the term heterosexuality, I told people we need to stop calling ourselves that, because again, here's the problem. Both of these terms and having been created by Paul Marie Kirkbenny, he was a homosexual. So what we're doing is we're now using a term created by somebody who was in direct opposition to the natural way of living as our mode of defining ourselves. In other words, we are being defined or defining ourselves by an abnormal idea. It's what I call abnormality defining what is normal. Mm-hmm. So to be more consistent and to be clear, because what we need is clarity. I say we call ourselves straight, because then there's no ambiguity there. It's crystal clear. You say I'm straight. So then when you say that, you're defining what you are and you're defining what you aren't. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by that? If you say I'm straight, what's the opposite of straight? Crooked.
Crooked.
So by defining what you are, you actually define what you're against as well. So that's how I come to the conclusions relative to homosexuality, heterosexuality, and straight.
Facts. And I'll say, Reya'Sekhmet, if you have any questions along the way outside of whatever you have ready for Baba Olatunji right now, don't hesitate. You can either tap me or you can respectfully chime in and just ask that question. But if there's anything that is you think that you need some extra clarity to, just ask it. Ashe?
Ashe.
And you're coming right out the gate swinging for the fences, with these questions so far. So you definitely not playing today.
Yeah.
Facts, Baba, because I don't play while I work and I don't work while I play.
Okay. Well, I shaded that. I shaded that.
All right.
Baba, I've been trying to trace the timeline, because when we talk about homosexuality and its normalization, we must be precise with our dates.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially for those who try to challenge our stance with half-truths and revisionist history. I say that to say, I was flipping through the channels and came across a documentary. I can't remember what day or when, but it's been a while ago. But in this documentary, it was talking about in ancient Mesopotamia around 2100 BCE, there were early references to male-on-male intimacy in texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh, or in ancient Greece around 600 BCE. What is it? Pederasty. I think that's what.
Pederasty.
Pederasty. Yeah, that's what they were calling it. Was institutionalized, and dates are very important for the family, right? I'm talking about grown men, right? Grown men.
Chronology is always important. Whenever you're discussing any event, be it current event or historical, you should, if to the degree that it is possible, you should always use chronological timelines.
Exactly.
I always have a saying that everything in creation has a chronological beginning. We may not always know what it is, but it has one. So it's incumbent on us, to the degree that it is possible, to find out what that chronological timeline is, its beginning and or its end, if there is an end. Even our own existence has a chronological timeline. Mine is 1954. Yours is whatever it is, and your granddaughter's is whatever it is. So everything has a chronological timeline. Everything.
Absolutely,
There's no.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
I bring that up. I bring that up because I'm talking about grown men with adolescent boys, often framed as mentorship,
Right.
but rooted in sexual exploitation. Even in Rome, India, and China, this documentary suggested same-sex acts either were common or being practiced around 400 BCE to current. Now, bear with me, Baba, because here's my understanding of all of this, and I appreciate your book. I appreciate this book, right? Because and all of the research that you've done with it is truly put the puzzle pieces together for my family and I. So for the family way in the back that may not know, Africa was not partaking in this behavior, not ritually, not culturally, and damn sure not cosmologically, at least until foreign contact.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I haven't came across no documented evidence of homosexuality being practiced or practiced as normal behavior in indigenous African societies prior to the invasions of the Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and later Europeans. So I ask you, did we miss anything from our studies of your book? Is there any documented history, archaeological, anthropological, linguistic, or otherwise that prove homosexuality was ever accepted and practiced as normal behavior in indigenous African culture before foreign invasion? Because if not, then we must name this clarity. This behavior was imported, it was imposed, and it was never part of our original cosmology. So Baba, please set the record straight for the youth, for our builders, and for those who still think confusion is culture.
Well, as far as my studies go, I have not seen any evidence that it was ever an acceptable form of behavior in indigenous African culture anywhere. And now, they always try to start with the most ancient civilization where writing and or any kind of documentation we can use. So they always try to start with Kemet. What some people incorrectly call Egypt. Egypt is a foreign term, by the way, that comes out of a word for a temple called Heru, which means the temple of Ptah. Some kind of way, when the Greeks got a hold of it, it became Egyptos, which later becomes Egypt. But anyway, we never referred to that country as Egypt. The indigenous people called it Kemet or Kemet. So they never called it Egypt, and they never called themselves Egyptians. They called themselves Kemetiyu. Now, getting to the more important part of the question, the earliest there is a tomb of these manicures called Nyakanamun and Kunamhotep. And in this tomb, they try to say, well, because of the picture, it looks like that they're kissing, which is not true. They were holding hands because what they wanted to show was that these were twin brothers. And so when you go in the tomb, you see each of them were married, each of them had children, and each of them were buried according to with honors according to the consistent principles of Ma'at. If they were homosexuals, somewhere along the line, it would have been documented in that tomb, in that area. There's no documentation whatsoever there relative to that. Now, even the Arab wannabe, he's an Arab, but he wants to be Kemetiyu, the leader of antiquities in ancient in Egypt, Dr. Zahi Hawass, says that he never believed that they were homosexuals. So he doesn't even believe they were homosexuals. So we can remove that one. The next one you'll see some of them like to use is the story of it's called the Contendings of Set and Heru. Now, this first story of Nyakanamun and Kunamhotep dates back to I believe, the 4th dynastic period of Kemet. This next one is the contendings of Set and Heru. They say date to the 20th dynastic period. For whatever reason, it's hard for me to believe that it dates that far back, but that's what I've been able to find so far. So I'll have to accept that for the time being, unless I find some other evidence.
Absolutely.
But be that as it may, when you read the contendings of Set and Heru, it's called the contendings of Set and Heru and the letters incident. And when you read that, and you read the story behind it, what people fail to realize is that in this contendings, all of these contendings, because there's several different versions of this. This one is called the letters incident. But in each incident, it's showing the kingship and the ascendancy to the throne after between Asar and his brother Set. And after Set murders Asar and chops him up into 14 pieces and throws him into the Nile. So the story centers on who is supposed to ascend to the throne, Asar's jealous brother or Heru. Now, keep this in mind. This is another thing that a lot of people overlook for whatever reason. This story, all of its different variations, it's a mythological story.
You said it right there. It's a story.
It's a story. It's a mythological story designed to project a idea of ascension to the throne. Now, when you read the particular one that we're talking about, the letters incident, which is the one they like to bring up all the time, I always ask this question. What is the moral to the story? In other words, what was the idea that they wanted to convey? What was the idea they wanted us to conclude about this story they were telling? What message were they trying to convey?
Right.
So when you read the story, it talks about in this particular story that Set comes across Heru being asleep and tries to use his penis to sexually enter Heru while he sleeps. So he doesn't. He was able to put his penis in between his thighs and he ejaculates sperm. And then Heru wakes up and catches it. And then he takes the sperm back to his mother, Set, and he asks her for help. And he says, "Mother, can you help me?" So they take their complaint to what we call the 9 Ened, what would be the different attributes of the divine, and they have a tribunal. And so in this process, they take, one of them takes this sperm and creates a crown, and they put it on Set's head. And Set rejects the crown. And because of that, they said that Set was wrong and Heru was correct, and he ascends the throne. Because what Set was trying to do was humiliate him and embarrass him and say, see, he's unworthy of taking the throne. So the process shows you a couple of things that's overlooked when people bring this up. One is that it's not homosexuality that was taking place. It's pedophilia, because, or pederasty, which was unheard of in ancient Kemet, because the uncle is trying to have sex, according to the mythological story, with his nephew. It's non-consensual because he's asleep. So that is akin to what? Rape. So again, and then they always talk about, well, we want to, what you adults do, consenting adults. There's nothing where Heru consented to that. So again, these are overlooked parts of this story that people want to present, and they missed those key points in that. There's no, it was not consensual, and it was between an adult and a child. So none of that is African at all. and which was why it was rejected and why Heru was allowed to ascend to the throne. So again, we have to be intelligent enough and honest enough to fully and thoroughly look at the story consistently so we can see where the angles are that they're trying to push. Because trust me, they have an intent to convince us that something is there that isn't.
Facts.
So I hope I made myself clear enough in breaking that down for y'all.
Oh, crystal clear, right, Reya'Sekhmet?
So clear.
Yeah. Ashe.
Okay.
Ashe.
Okay.
I'll share for that. So, Baba Olatunji, we must confront the root. Because if we don't name the sickness, we can't protect the village. Okay, so Baba, in your chapter 13 of your book, you expose the truth that most won't even touch. Childhood sexual abuse is a major cause of homosexuality and other dangerous behaviors. This isn't theory, family. I've come to know that this is documented research and confirmed from the Kinsey reports funded by the Rockefeller Foundation to the science of the LGBTQ organizations who refuse to condemn pedophilia, even when their own platforms, like the 1972 Gay Rights Platform and the 1993 March on Washington, have been linked to its normalization. And family, let me be crystal clear. Just like Barbara Sar has so beautifully said, anyone who harms a child sexually, psychologically, or even spiritually is worthy of the strongest punishment up to death. Because we are the children, we are the sacred. So come on, family. We are beneath of the ancestors reborn. And if adults do not protect us, even if it means putting our life on the line, if necessary, then you are not worthy of calling yourselves African. This is documented research, family, from Baba Olatunji. And I've also come to know through studying of Baba's book that Baba Emalema Baruti warns us in his book, as well, called The Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males. So before we talk about agendas, we must talk about accountability. Before we talk about identities, we must talk about trauma. And before we talk about rights, you gotta talk about the sacred rights that protect the young from confusion, violation, and erasure. Ashe.
Ashe. Yes.
So you say all of that.
For that, wow, she pretty much said everything that I said in the book, pretty much. That the issue here, as I said in that chapter, in chapter 13 of my book, that's the elephant in the room: sexual abuse and trauma. And most who are victims of sexual abuse and sexual trauma generally do not want to discuss it. Because see, the thing about trauma, oftentimes people have amnesia because of trauma. Just like collectively, most of us have amnesia, because amnesia is what? A painful memory that a person does not want to remember. That's why it's called amnesia, because amnesia, that's what usually causes amnesia. The memory is so painful you want to forget it. And so collectively we have amnesia too, because of the painful memories of what has happened to us on those plantations and on the ships, and even in the dungeons before we even got on the ships. So the whole process from being marched miles and days to the dungeons, to being held to the dungeons until the ships come, to being placed on the ships and crossing the Atlantic Ocean for what we would call our Ma'afa, all the way through to getting here. Those of us who survived that part of the aspect of the issue, to going on the plantations and all the stuff that happened after that, plays a role in our collective amnesia. So then you add on to that the individual amnesia that a person would suffer that a child would suffer due to the sexual trauma and abuse. And it's no wonder that we are where we are. And so nobody wants to talk about the trauma. not even the victims of the trauma want to talk about it. What they would rather do is now just live in it and wallow in the trauma and then wallow in this terrible behavior, which has no positive outlook for that individual. There's nothing positive about participating in such behavior. In fact, when we look at my book in chapter 15, where I talk about the health hazards relative to participating in these types of behaviors, we can see why such behavior is not in the best interest, not only of the race, our people collectively, but it's not even in the best interest of the individual, him or herself individually, to participate in it, because the health hazards are very dangerous. It's all kinds. Of course we talk about HIV and AIDS, but there are other diseases that are just as dangerous to the health. One in particular that I remember talking to my wife about this, she just said, "Yuck!" It's called gay bowel syndrome. I won't go into it because it's so vulgar how one contracts that. That it will make you upchuck. You would want to throw up. But suffice it to say that it produces, they acquire fecal matter in their stomach. That's why it's called gay bowel syndrome. And of course it creates all kinds of problems in their stomach area because of ingestion of the fecal matter into their bodies. So that's just one of the diseases. I lay out several, and I give citation for where you can find out even more. There's a really, really good book that goes even more in depth on the dangers, the health hazards. The book is called The Health Hazards of Homosexuality, What the Medical and Psychiatric Research Reveals. Powerful book. It's about 500 pages, but they just go into all of that kind of stuff.
Is that one of your, because you have a lot of citations, is that one of the citations you have in the book?
Yes, it is. Okay. Yes.
I'll definitely, just as you gave me the DSM-5 information, and I grabbed it, I'm going to grab that book as well. But I do want to say that, Reya'Sekhmet, I can see that you're passionate about this. So, all I would suggest is, just relax and, just present the information. And because I know she's been waiting all week to have this conversation, Barbara. She's had questions and questions and questions.
Okay, I just hope that I'm answering them as thoroughly as I possibly can.
Is he answering your questions so far? Okay.
Okay.
Apologies, Baba. I'm just passionate about this discussion today. And bear with me, Baba Olatunji, as I set up my question. Baba, I get the feeling that you didn't write this book out of anger, but you wrote it out of more of urgency. And that urgency begins with protecting the children, so that if we know sexual abuse of children is a documented root cause of confusion, trauma, and dangerous behaviors, and if we agree that those who violate the children deserve harshest consequences, even death, then I need to ask and must ask one question with 3 parts. Why are so many adults silent? 2, why do we hesitate to confront predators in our families, in our schools, churches, and even in our movements? 3, why does LGBTQ organizations refuse to publicly condemn pedophilia when the protection of children should be non-negotiable? If we claim to love our people, then protecting the children must be a sacred law. So I ask you again, so what are adults willing to sacrifice to protect the youth? Because if adults won't risk their comfort, their reputation, or even their lives, then they've already failed us. So please, break it down for the family so that even the most stubborn of folk will have to consider it.
Well, the children are our most sacred resource because they are a extension of ourselves. That's first and foremost. They don't ask to come here. So when they come here, it's incumbent upon us. It's our duty to protect them by whatever means necessary. So for me, what I see for adults are excuses primarily because of what happens is that many adults, after seeing the results of what has happened to their child, will have a tendency to rationalize it so as to not condemn the child because they love the child. But look, we all love our family. So what happens is that we allow that love to cloud our moral compass from being activated in all circles. And that's a major problem, is that we have lost our moral compass, our cultural moral compass, because as indigenous African culture, we would be condemning such behavior. But now that we've been under the auspices of these people who brought us here, who have tried to render us less than human, who have tried to acculturate us and literally beat the Africanness out of us. We have adopted many ideas and behaviors that come directly from them. This, in the process, has allowed us to incorrectly begin to look at how we would solve these problems. So we look to the people who have caused these traumas and transpose those traumas onto us, and then we have, in many instances, perpetuated those ourselves onto our children instead of protecting them. So what I see is that you have grown men sexually violating and traumatizing children. And we're talking about of all ages. Most people think that we're just talking about maybe teenagers. No, we're talking about younger children as well. And so all of this trauma,
all the way down to even babies, Baba.
Yes, even babies. And so what I always tell people is this: in order for us to begin the process of remedying this situation, the first thing we have to do is say that this behavior is wrong and incorrect. Mm-hmm. And we must be consistent in saying that to those who continue to want to perpetuate it. Not be apathetic or display any degree of cowardice when it comes to us. We have to say, look, that's what you want to do, that's fine, but it's still incorrect behavior and cannot be accepted. I say, go get help for what it is that, the trauma that you have suffered. Most of these people, what they want to do is make excuses for the trauma or act like there was never any trauma at all and begin the process of trying to claim that they were born this way. There's no scientific evidence at all that anybody was born gay or born with a gay gene. Because in order for somebody to be born gay, you need a gene that will produce you being gay. But the problem with that is that homosexuality is a behavior. It's not something you're born with. It's a behavior. You have to participate in it in order to be it.
Yeah.
So you have to
participate in it. That is a great segue, Baba, into what I want to talk about. And that is, I want to take us back a bit to chapter 8, where you talk heavy about the origins of words like homophobia and homophobic. But here's the thing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the DSM-5 does not list homophobia as a diagnosable condition, but they are rhetorical labels and not a psychiatric diagnosis. Will you speak to that? Dive a little deeper with that so that the family can catch the meaning behind the movement without any shadow of a doubt, and let the family know what are the correct definitions of these terms? I know we talked about we're straight. We know
Right.
that. But for the
Right.
family that may not know, and what made you start your book with definitions? Why begin with the very words that many of us think we already understand? Is it because, as you say, language is the first battlefield? And if we don't control that terms, we've already lost the war? Can you break that
Yes,
down for the family, Baba?
absolutely. The problem is that we're using terms mostly that you see in everyday parlance today, are terms that was created by various LGBTQIA think tanks. These think tanks, all they do is study how to better convince us that what they're saying is correct. So part of that is language. Us accepting these terms and using them in the manner that they want us to use them. That's the first victory that they're having with us, is getting us to do that. So we had to go back to understanding that all terms not only have a meaning, but they have an original meaning. And we need to go back into the process of studying the original meaning and what it meant, and then coming up to today, and then going back and attacking that so we can show what those terms actually mean. Because oftentimes many of our people use terms and don't even know what they mean, because they've become everyday parlance, everyday usage. Terms like cisgender and gender fluid and non-binary and all this other kinds of terms that they like to use. And so that's perfect. So, but getting back to the original part of your question about homophobia and being homophobic, there are two terms. There's homo, which is representing homosexuality, which is why they use that. And then there's phobia and/or phobic. In understanding the English language and how it works, the homo is the prefix. Phobia or phobic is the suffix. So let's deal with the phobia first. Phobia is a clinical diagnosis. It's a psychiatric clinical diagnosis. So when you go to the DSM-5 and go into sections 300.2, from page 197 to 235, it tells you, it lists some of the ideas of what a phobia is. Primarily, a phobia is an extreme, irrational fear of something, or someone. So now they put homo on there, and then what they did was try to change the meaning of phobia to say that it means that you hate somebody, rather than dealing with the term and what it means, which means they would have to be saying that I have an extreme irrational fear of homosexuals. And as I say in my book, and I say this again today, I do not have an extreme irrational fear of homosexuals. I know what they want. They want access to our children's precious minds, bodies, and souls. And so once you understand that's what they want. Now, people will say, oh, no, they don't want that. Yes, they do. I prove that throughout chapter 10 of my book, where I show you some of the books that they have out there. I talk about the major organization that has been pushing this. It's called the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educational Network. That was started by a gay activist named Kevin Jennings. And it goes into, and they have a website that you can go on, and you can go on that website and look at all the books. And they got hundreds of books on the website, and they're all pushing this homosexual agenda. And so I'm going to show you one book I have in my library right now. Genderqueer.
Okay. Yep.
And so that's just one book. I list several more in my book. And I show you quotes and or pages so you can see what they're pushing on the children. This is why there's so much sexual confusion right now in the schools. Despite what I feel, what you and I might feel about this guy, for instance, who just got murdered last week or week before last. He was consistent in his debates with these gender confused individuals.
Mhm.
And he talks about these, you can see he's on college campuses, and you listen to them and you listen to how they try to explain their positions. And their positions are crazy, literally crazy and insane. And so, um, what I tried to do in the book was to show us what they're saying so that we know how to protect ourselves and fight back.
Right,
That's
right.
why the book is entitled An African-Centered Response to the LGBTQIA plus organizations and their agenda. It's not about Pookie and Ray Ray.
Exactly.
It's not about your cousin Pookie who's gay or your cousin Ray Ray. This is about the organizations and their agenda and how they're pushing that agenda on us and our children. That's what the conversation is about. And that's the part that people misunderstand. And that's how we've gotten to a point where we're arguing about whether or not somebody's born gay or all this other stuff that we see going on today, is because we don't see the agenda and we don't see how we've been embroiled in the agenda and brainwashed into acceptance of their agenda. We don't even realize that has happened to us. One of the books, I didn't quote from the book, but I list 4 books that people should get. There's an organization called the Tavistock Institute. There are 2 books dealing with the Tavistock Institute. One is called the Tavistock Institute on Human Relations. The full title escapes me right now. I'd have to pull it off my shelf, which means I'd have to get up and turn my back to y'all.
Yeah, you don't need to do that, Baba.
And the other one is called the Tavistock Institute, Social Engineering the Masses. Social, and that's what is taking place. They have socially engineered the masses of people, in this case in the United States, into acceptance of behavior that produces nothing of any substance at all, produces nothing but more craziness. What I like to say, and then I try to use terms consistently and accurately. These people, on top of suffering sexual trauma and sexual abuse, they suffer a psychosis. What is a psychosis? The definition of a psychosis is a break with reality. That's what's going on here. Because if you can come to me and try to argue with me that you are a female when you are obviously a male, you're suffering a psychosis. You are clearly suffering a break with reality. And you need to go and get help for that.
Absolutely.
And so anybody who argues against that doesn't know what they're talking about.
Baba,
I say.
how do these terms function to distort African cosmology, erase ancestral clarity, and confuse behavior with biology?
Well, African cosmology is based on the principles of complementarity between male and female and duality of opposites. And so you see that duality of opposites and that complementarity throughout the process of African cosmology. There's always an attribute of the divine that's male and an attribute of the divine that's female, and that they produce offspring. That's how the cosmology is in African society. And it's reflective of the physiology in terms of how we function on the physical plane of existence, where you have a male and a female producing a child. and the rearing of children. So there is no reproduction of children with two males or two females. The only thing you produce is more confusion. And this is why I speak out against allowing them to adopt children, because most often they're going to confuse those children.
Very much
And so those children will wind up becoming participating in the same types of behavior, and oftentimes they will sexually abuse those children themselves. We've seen many instances where they have been arrested and charged. There was one incident I remember fully where there was these two gay men that were sexually abusing these two black boys, just having a good. They were having this a fine time. You know, and it finally came out, and so they locked them up. They put them behind bars. But here's the thing: look at the damage that has already been done to those children. Will they be able to ascend beyond the trauma to become fully functioning human beings ever again? We don't know.
Yeah, and just to that. I know that there was a governmental statistic that had came out for 2024 that at that time it showed that there was more violence domestically within the households of same-sex coupling than it was with traditional families.
Straight. Yeah,
exactly.
I have a friend of mine, very good friend of mine. Her granddaughter was murdered. She was a lesbian.
To the ancestor.
And she went to the partner because she wanted to break it off, and went to visit her to break it off in person. The partner took a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her in the chest and killed her. So this is indicative of just some of the trauma that we see with these people. Statistically speaking, as you say, and I talk about that in the book as well, there's more quote unquote domestic abuse within those families than it is in traditional male and female families. And this is a byproduct because by and large, they are extremely promiscuous. So there becomes a lot of jealousy and envy and competition and all of that in that. And so that's where the trauma and stuff comes in at. And that's where the sexual abuse comes in at, because one partner wants a monogamous relationship while the other partner wants to do his or her own thing. This is consistent with them, that they are promiscuous. That's why, and here's the proof of that. In 2016, the Supreme Court finally came out and said that they have the right to marry. Now, one of the things that I told my wife was that, and most people didn't realize this, and I was asking the question then because I already knew what was coming, because I had already seen the 1972 Gay Rights Platform, the 1993 March on Washington platform. I asked the question, what else do they want? Because they're going to want other things. But getting back just to the marriage thing, here was an important thing that people need to think about. They said they wanted to be able to get married. And yet, you would have thought that after the Supreme Court said that they could get married, that they would be at the various courthouses throughout the United States, tearing down the door to get in there to get married. But that's just not the case. Because that was never their intent. Their intent was they just wanted to be able to say, nah, I can get married. I don't care whether you like it or not, but I can get married. Their intent was never to actually get married. They just wanted to be able to throw it up in straight people's faces to do that. Because if you notice, the overwhelming majority of them, what do they do when they have their gay pride parades? They want to make a spectacle of themselves.
Right.
They want to stretch the boundaries of decent behavior. And you see this one. If you see any gay pride, if you were able to go to a gay pride parade, which I know you probably wouldn't want to go to, but if you look at what they do and you see them consistently, they are just the most uh, perverse in their displays of being able to quote unquote be gay as they march up and down the street, displaying nakedness or near nakedness, or just all kinds of debauchery in their behavior.
Right.
Because that's who they really are. That's who they really are. There was a video. I wish I could find it and tell y'all about it. I saw it, and there was a demonstration. There was supposed to have been a peaceful demonstration in New York City. I believe it was last year, and it was a demonstration by a group of women. They call themselves TERFs.
Mm-hmm.
And the term TERFs is a term, well, they don't call themselves TERFs. The LGBTQ organization calls them TERFs. I can't remember what the term means right now. It's a acronym. Hold on a second, because I need to look this term up.
Okay.
Because it's
I'm writing something down as well. So
yeah. Hold on. Let me look this up, because I'm trying to hold my other phone while I do this. Hold on. Okay. It means trans exclusionary radical feminist. This is a term that the LGBTQ transgender community has created for straight women who oppose, even lesbian women who oppose them. Because here's what has happened. This is how crazy it is. That's why I say they are so crazy. All these different acronyms, they're crazy. Even lesbians don't agree with transgenders. Because here's what has happened. With the transgender men claiming to be women, then they want to go into the spaces where women are. They're saying, no, we're women. Now, the lesbian woman knows the one thing about her, she knows she's a woman. She wants to have a sexual relationship with another woman, not a man trying to be a woman. So she starts speaking out for those spaces for women. This is inconsistent with transgenders who want the women on their sides to support their ability to now do what? Take their space, take their place as quote unquote women. You see the insanity of it all? They're
very much
crazy.
so.
They're crazy. So now they could come up with a new term to describe them, and they call them feminists. So they call them TERFs. Trans exclusionary radical feminists. Now there was a demonstration in New York City last year or earlier this year, and they were up there having they had their little platform and they would speak. These were women, actual women, speaking out against them. I wish y'all could have seen this. It was not only was it crazy, it was extremely dangerous to the women, because the LGBTQ community, homosexuals and transgenders, came out in mass and tried to literally, they had to have police, they had the area cordoned off, they were spitting on them and all. I mean, it was crazy. It was literally crazy. There's a video about it that's on YouTube. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a video about it, an hour-long documentary. And it showed the level of emotional anger and vitriol that they have for these women who don't want transgender people in women's spaces. It's crazy. Crazy.
Question here is kind of a sidebar.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of just wanting to know if you know anything about this. I was having a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and we were having a conversation about what the ancient Kemetu ancestors believed in when it came to the Neteru. And I was telling that person that the Greeks came in and basically stole everything, but if there was a kitchen sink, they probably stole the kitchen sink too. And so when the Greeks carved out who their gods were, it was a direct ripoff of our Neteru. And so we're going through Zeus and Ares and Poseidon and blah 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 blah. And we get to the character of Medusa. And this person was asking me, did I know anything about Medusa, and if Medusa was Medusa a Neteru in ancient Kemet? And I couldn't speak to that because I've never heard of the Medusa story outside of watching movies like Clash of the Titans or something that, you know. So, you know, is there anything that you can bring to the table when it comes to the Medusa character?
I don't know a lot about the Medusa character, but I'll say this about the whole idea of the co-option of the Neteru into the Greek pantheon of gods, which would include Medusa, is that when they took what they took from us, they didn't keep it in the way that it was. They took it and molded it into their own cultural idiom. So that's why Zeus is a pederast god.
Yeah.
See, so even though they co-opted from Amun, right? Amun was not a pederast, but Zeus is. So that shows. So the whole, all of it. That's Greek. We need to understand that when they took it, they added all this other stuff to it that was not there. It's what I call. I use this. This is the analogy I always use. It's like if you came to my house and you said, "Now says, would you like a cup of coffee?" You say, "Yeah, I would like a cup of black coffee." I come back with a cup of coffee that's got cream, sugar, nutmeg, and all kinds. And then you saying, "Well," and you getting in the coffee, you're trying to figure out how you can remove all the stuff out of that coffee, right? But you can't because it's all mixed in together. You would have to literally throw all of it out and start from scratch. And so, what I say is that without even having to get into the Medusa thing itself, the Medusa thing itself, all of it has been perverted and polluted with Greek cultural, behavioral consistencies that go back to them. Because keep in mind, as we like to say, the gods didn't create man, man created the gods. And they created them out of their own cultural behavior and ideas. So once you understand that, then you understand why Medusa is the way she is, why Zeus is the way he is, and the rest of them. It's based on Greek culture. So we shouldn't look for the answers to what we need to do through Greek culture. Because when we look at Zeus, as I said, he was a pederast. So people say, well, really? Yes, because he turns himself into a bird and did what? Flew down from Mount Olympus because he saw this young male boy named Ganymedes, kidnapped Ganymedes, took him back to Mount Olympus, and made Ganymedes his young male lover. You see? So, and this is their most powerful god was a pederast. We also know that Hercules was a homosexual too. So again, this is part and parcel of their behavior. It's in their cosmology. This behavior is in their cosmology. It's not just consistently in the behavior. When I read the Symposium by Plato, and I saw just the one quote that blew my mind when he says, "It is assumed," quote, "it is assumed without argument that pederasty itself alone can satisfy man's highest and noblest aspirations. And the love between a man and a woman was spoken of at all is altogether inferior, a purely physical impulse whose sole object is procreation."
Wow. Let that sit for a moment, Bob.
Yeah, as we like to say,
that.
marinate on that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, Baba Olatunji, it's time for another question from the segment zone. This is where I will ask you a lifelong question to help stretch the imagination. So, Baba Olatunji, we've been deep in the trenches today, truth telling, myth busting, and protecting the village. But let me shift the energy just a little.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Truth telling and standing on business can take a toll on the spirit, mind, and the body. Like for me, when I feel all mixed up inside, I have my mom JV on my Aakhu'Ra, light a little candle, and play some music. Sometimes I just write in my notebook, creating stories and journaling my thoughts. That's my way of recharging and getting strong again. So, Baba, you've given us clarity, strategy, and ancestral fire.
Mm-hmm.
So, Baba Olatunji, my question is, when you're not writing, teaching, or building systems of protection,
What restores you? What keeps your spirit light when the work gets heavy? Is it music, ritual, laughter, or something else that reminds you why you fight? Because even warriors need balance, and even Sekhmet rest between battles.
Yes. Well, for me, believe it or not, the war itself energizes me. But of course, I love music. Um, and my family, in this case, my son and my wife energize me regularly. So that's what keeps me laughing. That's what keeps the laughter. Um, I, 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 like everybody else, there's some little trivial pursuits that I use, but generally speaking, I love listening to music. Um, I can't listen to stuff that's inconsistent with what I am. So I primarily listen to what we call old school R&B because I used to sing in a group. So I listen to a lot of that, stuff like my favorite era of music, popular music that is from 1968 until about 1977 or so. Um, and so all of the various groups, self-contained acts, which are groups meaning they play and sing as well as just singing groups. That's basically what I love to listen to. I also love listening to smooth jazz as well as traditional jazz. The other night, me and my wife were sitting up, and I was listening to. I had put a post up on Facebook about a jazz artist who I was turned on to by my horn section when I was singing. And because his birthday was Wednesday, I think. Yeah, Wednesday, the 23rd. John Coltrane.
Mhm.
And so I went to listen to. So I put up I always put the cut up that I was turned on to that blew my mind. And because I studied what we call theory and harmony, I began to study the actual music, how to read it and write it and that type of stuff. So I started studying that when I turned 19 in 1973. And so I remember when my trombone player told me to go listen to it. And I went and bought the album. And so I'm listening. I put it on and I'm applying those mechanics as I'm listening to it. And I was floored.
Mhm.
And I was hooked on. I've been hooked on jazz ever since, and that was the cut is called Giant Steps. For anybody who wants to know, it's a beautiful song. And I was letting my wife listen to it the other night because my wife is younger than me, and she couldn't. She had not really fully listened. And then the other night, when she was listening to it, she was like, "Wow!" She said, "Now I see what you're saying," because she was actually able to hone in and hear the solos and what he was doing. And she was just wow. And I always talk about with jazz is that the thing about jazz and jazz artists is that when they're playing, particularly the solos, each note is an idea.
Mhm.
And so imagine listening to John Coltrane and he's playing all these notes. All of those notes are ideas. And imagine the breakneck speed he's using to play these different ideas that's coming out of his head. All that it's just mind blowing. So I get into music. I will close my eyes, put my headphones on, and listen to music that way. Or I'll, if it's R&B, I might sing some of the songs, sing the background notes. If I'm singing, if it's not the voice that I sang when I was singing, I'll be harmonizing in the group with the group harmonies or whatever, or singing the lead if it's a song that I would sing. And so for me, that's where I get my enjoyment, and when I want to take a break from all of the insanity that's going on. Sometimes I'll watch an athletic event. I love basketball, and I'm not. I watch football every now and then, and I'll watch basketball every now and then. But it's not something that I have to. Sports is not something that I have to do anymore. There was a time in my life where, particularly the NFL, I watched it, consistently. Yeah, every Sunday I sit down and watch. That was my, or or the NBA I was watching regularly, and I will watch college basketball and sometimes college football. I don't do either of those anywhere near as much as I used to because I don't view them the same way. There's a lot of what I call fixed games, especially the Super Bowl has become to me.
You have to start questioning some of that stuff because
So
money, man.
I question the outcomes in terms of how they're controlled. Because some things, like how you heard that expression, some things don't add up.
Yes.
And so if you've watched, say, football as long as I have, or basketball, or participate in it. Even though I'm only 5'3", I used to go out on. I was what they call playground legend. I used to go out on the court and do play pickup all the time. In fact, I played basketball regularly, consistently, 3 to 4 days a week in the summer, and 2 to 3 days a week in the winter, for about 30 years. I finally gave it up in around 2004 when I turned 50. Because it was my back kept bothering me as I went out there, so I couldn't play anymore.
Hey, you got there dunking on people, so
No, I couldn't dunk, but I was real. I was fast, and I could shoot from long distance, and I could finish going to the hole. I was a pretty good ball player. And so I watch things from everything I do has an analytical component to it. So I'm analyzing things as I'm watching them. And I'm looking at, certain things. So when I watched the Super Bowls, I started seeing that it's certain things that were happening in the games. That's not making sense. Something's not right there. There's something wrong with that play. And then it became blatant after a while, but people couldn't see it. It became blatant. The first blatant one for me was the Seattle Seahawks playing the New England Patriots, and that last play that allowed the New England Patriots to win the game is just real strange to me.
That the one where they should have gave it to beast mode?
Yes,
on the 1 yard line.
Absolutely. Here you got the best offensive line in football. I mean, look, they have been beating them routinely the entire game down the field, and all it would have taken, he could have fell 1 yard and been in the end zone.
Yeah, because when they kicked it off to them, he gave them like 60 yards to get to the 1 yard line.
Right.
And so it's like, why would you not go back to him to get the win?
I'm like this. If whatever your strength is as an athlete, be it individually or as a team, whatever your strength is, you should make your opponent beat you doing what you do best. And when I saw them allow them to be beaten doing something that they don't do, I said, there's something wrong here. Then the next year, I saw some more strange stuff. And then finally, the following year, I saw some more strange stuff. And after that, I said, yeah, this is, I can see what's going on here. And after that, I pretty much stopped. And then about the same time, all that stuff was going on with Kaepernick and all this other stuff. So I just started watching it a little bit this year and last year because of the Baltimore Ravens, because I'm a Ravens fan. But I'm still seeing even them. I'm seeing some stuff. So for me, it's, I can take it or leave it. It's not something that I have to do. So I use, like I said, I use music mostly as my means of getting away from it all, or just spending time with my family and doing things with my wife and my youngest son, who is now 12. So that's for me that is the joy in and of itself. So that's
Shay.
yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. Baba, chapter 17, what is African-Centeredness? This chapter hit different because it's not just about information, it's about orientation. And I see how we build, how we protect. So, Baba, I've studied your breakdown in this chapter with my Nana and my Baba, and I've come to know that African-Centeredness is deep because we have to be African-centered. Being African-centered for me is spiritual, it's ancestral. It's about aligning with Ma'at, because if your walk doesn't match your talk, you're not being African-centered, you're just being loud. So, Baba, I need you to speak to the family, especially the ones who think African-centeredness is about being race cautious or anti-white from your perspective. What is African-centeredness, and how do we know when we're actually walking in it versus just walking around?
Well, you start with indigenous African culture. And even that, we have to examine it, because I'm not saying everything we did was right, which is why, if you notice, throughout that chapter, I talk about the best of what it means to be an African. What is the best of that? So the first thing I do is I give us a correct definition of culture, because without a clear, precise definition of what culture is, we're confused. So essentially, without reading my book, I'm just going off the cuff of my mind. It's a set of concepts, principles, ideas, and practices that a group of people come together, usually along racial and ethnic lines, and they agree that they're going to adhere to these concepts, beliefs, ideas, and practices. And then they arrange all their things around it, their holidays and the whole nine. It consists of language, your behavior, your sense of right and wrong, marriage, how you rear your children, how the child relates to their parents, how the parents relate to their children, how the husband relates to his wife, how the wife relates to her husband, how the husband relates to his mother-in-law, father-in-law, and so forth, all the way. In other words, in short, culture permeates and manifests itself in all areas of people activity. So once you understand that aspect of it, and then you start to look at culture, and you start to say, okay, that's going to also deal with your political ideology and your philosophy and all of that. So then you have to analyze the best of that. So are we looking to emulate Chinese culture, Caucasian culture, Arab culture, Native American culture, Australian culture? What are we doing? If we are African people, and we are, then we should be doing what it is to be African. So that means we have to go back and learn and figure that out. This is why I say in that chapter that we have to do what? Kebuka, remember? And Sankofa, reach back and fetch it and to bring it forward. So that's why we have to do that. You can't do that unless you study African culture consistently and with the intent of trying to bring it back and implement it. This is of vital importance that many of us seem to have failed to understand. And so you'll hear some people try to tell you that we should be communist socialists, that we should be capitalists, that, and all of these things come from our mortal enemies. And what I say is that if it comes from them, throw it in the trash can.
You
The only
definitely got
thing
a question.
we need to master at this point is STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what we need to
Facts.
master. We take that and then we Africanize how we're going to use it. Not Chinese-ize it, not Russianize it, not Francize it, not any of those things. Africanize it, how we're going to use it based on African history and culture. That's what we need to be doing.
Facts, facts. Now, Baba, I sat with chapter 16. I cross-referenced your work with Baba Baruti's homosexuality and the effeminization of African males. And what I keep finding over and over again is silence. Not the silence from our ancestors, but silence from those trying to rewrite them. Because when you strip away, or at least I've come to know that when you strip away colonial anthropology, when you decode the etymology of our language and examine the cosmological framework of places like Kemet and Nubia, you don't find homosexuality as an accepted norm. But what you do find is order. You know, you find ma'at, balance between masculine and feminine principles, not confusion. So my question is, are there any archaeological, anthropological, etymological, linguistic, or any other evidence, any real indigenous African evidence, for that matter, that proves homosexuality or homosexual behavior or any other sexual deviant behaviors were ever acceptable part of African culture before foreign contact? And I ask it that way, Baba, not for Reya'Sekhmet and I, but for the family that may be listening, because believe it or not, we get emails or comments on people saying that either Reya'Sekhmet is being divisive, or I'm pushing a narrative that is corrupting her mind and children's mind alike.
Okay. Well, let me answer your question very, very emphatically. No. There is none. There is none. And nobody can provide any. Now, you have made up stuff, but nobody can provide any etymological, anthropological, archaeological, linguistic evidence that such behavior has ever been natural and normal accepted behavior by the overwhelming majority of African people before foreign contact.
One more time. One more time. Say it one more time.
There's no documented evidence that homosexuality or any of the other behaviors relative to the LGBTQIA plus has ever been an acceptable behavior by the overwhelming majority of indigenous African people before foreign contact. No
Say it
evidence.
one more time,
whatsoever.
Baba. One more time for the family way in the back.
There is no archaeological, anthropological, etymological, linguistic, or any other kind of evidence proving any of the LGBTQIA behaviors has ever been an acceptable part of indigenous African culture before foreign contact. Period. And there's no peer-reviewed research papers that can be presented that proves otherwise. Now, I saw a peer-reviewed paper the other day, and it was comical because when I saw the site that it came from, it was called, wait a minute, hold on, let me grab, I'm going to set this down, my phone down for a minute so I can grab it. Just hold on for a second.
Okay.
So that's where they put it at to get it peer-reviewed, because they know if they put it in a real peer-reviewed journal, it's going to be rejected. But notice it is in the journal of opinion. This is what I say opinions are. This was something my Jegna used to say. My Jegna, he was so wise, but he was very matter of fact. So sometimes he would curse. He said, excuse my expression, y'all. He said opinions are like assholes. Everybody got one. And then there is a saying that I've always loved to use. We had a great psychiatrist, not psychologist, but a psychiatrist who was African-Centered in Baltimore. Her name is Dr. Patricia Newton. She went by the name of
I've heard of her.
She said, and I quote, "The truth oftentimes is what you believe, but the facts are facts regardless of what you believe."
Powerful.
Yeah, and that has always stuck out to me. And so, what I tell people is when I hear them say these kinds of things, I know they haven't done any research. If you notice near the end of the book, I have a quote that I use all the time. Initially, I got it from a white man, and I modified it for today's audience. So, in its modification, it becomes now my quote because I modified it and I use it myself. And it says, "When a man or woman who is honestly mistaken hears the truth, he or she will either quit being mistaken or cease to be honest." So when I'm debating people, after I present all of the documented facts and evidence, I ask them, which one are you?
Wow.
Powerful.
Wow. That was definitely powerful, Baba. To even follow that up, Reya'Sekhmet, how you feeling over there? Let's do a temperature check. Feeling pretty good? Yeah, you like how this discussion is going? Is it getting your questions answered today?
I like the path we're going down.
Yeah, facts.
How are you feeling?
I'm on point. I'm fired up, and the energy right now is up here, and that's where I would like to keep it. So because this is powerful information that we being blessed with today, and Ashe to matter of fact, let's give Baba Olatunji 3 Ashes. Ashe.
Baba Olatunji, I've walked their chapters with reverence. I've studied the silence around childhood sexual abuse as best as I could, the myth of the gay gene and the strategic access of the LGBTQIA agendas into our sacred spaces. I've also cross-referenced your work with Baba Baruchi's book titled Centered. And what I've come to know is there's a coordinated effort to confuse behavior with biology, to weaponize language, and to normalize trauma as identity. I've come to know how terms like gender identity and same-gender loving are used to soften the truth and redirect our liberation movement away from sovereignty and toward assimilation. I've come to know how children are being targeted, not just physically, but spiritually and psychologically through media, programming, and policy. So I ask, what must we do right now as African-centered builders to protect we, the children, restore our cosmology, and confront this agenda without apology? Because I believe, as you've shown, that silence is complicity and clarity, it's protection. So guide us, Baba. What does full resistance look like, and how do we ensure that we, the children, grow up in truth and not in trauma?
Well, for me, it starts with being clear about the terms that are being used, knowing their origins and knowing what they mean and breaking them down. Like, for instance, you mentioned homosexuality versus the term same gender loving persons, which was a term that was popularized by a homosexual by the name of Cleo Monago. It's no difference between being a homosexual and same gender loving person. It's the same thing. He's playing semantics. So we see these kinds of games that are being played. We have to recognize the games and again be consistent in our presentation using documented evidence and facts, which is what I did in the book, where I tried to present clear documented evidence I went to peer review research articles, so I quoted from them, which is why I could prove that there's no such thing as a gay gene or anybody being born gay. The definitions themselves, I showed where the terms came from, who came up with the terms. Like, for instance, homophobia came from a man named George Weinberg, a psychologist. Some of the other terms where they came from, like I said, they have think tanks. And out of the think tanks are strategies that they use to try to convince us that what they're saying is correct and scientific. We need to do the same thing. What I tried to do was to become it wasn't my intent to become my own think tank, but it was to provide what I saw was not being consistently portrayed or presented to our people as a means of a weapon to fight back. So my book is a major weapon that can be used by us to fight back. It has the consistency of presentation, so you can say, okay, this is what I should be saying when they present this. This is what I should be presenting, so forth and so on and so on. But you got to be consistent and you have to be clear. Most importantly, after you have all of the information and the evidence provided in the book, you have to have the courage to want to stand up and fight back. Because we got, it's sad to say, but we got a lot of chumps in our race right now. A lot of them, men and women, who are afraid to speak out, primarily because these organizations that we speak out against are powerful. And they use something that I call political, economic, intellectual, and social terrorism and bullying tactics to bully and terrorize us into acceptance. This is why you see a lot of famous people, when they say something that these gay organizations don't like, the next thing you know, in a couple of days after they lean on them, they come back and say, well, I had to be educated. Well, the question one should be asking is, well, how did you get educated so quickly?
Exactly.
Two, what was it that they educated you on?
Good question.
And so these are the kinds of things that have to be consistently looked at, analyzed, and better able to present yourself. So the information in the book will help you fight back. It helps us fight back because we have the evidence. Like when somebody says to me, oh, you're homophobic, and I always ask them, these are the kinds of questions that I would ask. If somebody says, oh, you're homophobic, my question is, well, what psychiatric or psychological tests did you run on me to determine that I have an extreme irrational fear of homosexuals? Because a phobia is an extreme irrational fear of something or someone. What test did you run on me personally to determine and come to the conclusion that I was homophobic? See how I did that? If you ask them those kinds of questions, watch what happens.
It makes me ask a question. It makes me want to ask a quick question. This is a pop-up quiz right now, Baba. Pop-up quiz for Reya'Sekhmet. You've heard Baba Olatunji say a word several times in this discussion called phobia.
Yeah.
What does phobia? You know what? Share with Baba. What's your understanding? What does phobia mean to you?
Being scared of something.
There you go. Enough said.
That's all. And so they try to get you to say, oh, you're preaching hate. And so you got to lock them in. Don't allow them to, as I always say, never allow, when you're having a discussion with someone, never allow that person to assign a stance to you that you did not assign to yourself. That means don't allow them to inject a term or project a term onto you that you didn't use yourself. Because then what happens if you start to use that term to try to argue, they already got you, because now you're playing on their playground. You see what I'm saying?
And this is based off chapter 18, the end game.
Yes. Yeah. So never allow them to do that. If they say you're homophobic, go right to defining the term and lock them in. This is why I wrote chapter 17, because I was not going to allow them to come and tell me that what African-centeredness meant. When I know, one, they don't know. Two, that's not their intent. Three, their intent is to try to defeat what I'm saying. So they'll say homophobe. I mean, or Afro. What they'll say, Afrocentric. I'm not Afrocentric. Afrocentric derives from Afrocentrism, which is something that was coined. That's a term that was coined by Malefi Asante. I don't agree with Afrocentrism and don't subscribe to it. So I'm not going to allow you to now try to project onto me that that's what I'm talking about. That's what. So what I did in my book was I used what he said Afrocentrism is. It's his term. He coined it. So since he coined it, I'm going to use his definition. And then as you read in chapter 17, I showed you what he said. Then I said, that's not what I'm talking about. Now, I don't have to talk badly about him at all. I'm just saying what he said it is. That's what Afrocentricity is. I'm cool. That's what you say it is. That's fine. That's your stance. I said African-centered. So here's what African-centered means. That's not the same thing as Afrocentric. So let's be clear about that. So that's why the first weapon is clarity. Clarity and consistency in presenting your argument. And you can only do that by being clear and studying and being consistent in your arguments. And that's on any topic, not just this one. It's the same with ancient Kemet when I argue with different people about that, and the kinds of arguments that mainly Caucasians and Arabs like to use when I'm in these kinds of social websites and arguing with them about certain things. Same thing. The same thing with arguing with a Caucasian about the system of racism, white supremacy, and what it is and how it works. And when they say something like it's a myth or something like that, one, it's not a myth. And then you have to go back. You have to study enough to be able to be analytical and sharp-minded enough to know how to present your argument. Because that's the problem here, is that in this case, consistency of study is what will produce what you need to effectively make the point that you're trying to make. If you don't know what you're talking about, it's going to be easy for them to tie you up in knots and have you chasing all kinds of narratives while they've gotten you off of the course of where you are. And make sure that you do not allow them to deflect into other discussions. Because people who lose arguments, they either wind up doing ad hominem attacks where they attack you personally, or they try to change the subject and deflect into other areas or create what we call straw man arguments. So you got to be sharp in recognizing their tactics as you go forward.
Absolutely. And I know that to be true because I've seen some of your social media posts where sometimes you got to thump them in the head a little bit.
Yeah.
And, and present information that is based and supported with documented evidence.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And I've seen you've done that, very, very precisely, clearly. And, I don't see where they responded back. But can you speak to, an example of what you've had to contend with? Based
on
your
this
book
subject,
from other
it's
people?
always emotional. And that emotion becomes arrogant, because most of the time I see people say stuff like, we got bigger fish to fry.
Now, are these people, are these us, or are these people that don't look like that?
I see that a lot of times with us. They'll say, we got bigger fish to fry. The question I always ask them, what's more important than our children?
Absolutely.
And when I ask that, all I get is crickets. Europeans, Caucasians, they tend to try to make what I call fallacious arguments using what they claim is science, and they'll say some stuff. Well, the scientific research, and then when you ask them, see what you got to do, you got to make them tell you what science, what peer review article are you talking about? Can you cite it?
Mm-hmm.
You see, you make them present what it is that they say that they have. Because I did that in the book. I presented precise arguments and studies. Make them do the same thing. Don't allow people to just say something is and they don't have the evidence to back it up. Make them
Absolutely.
provide it. Make them
Absolutely.
provide it. It's the same thing when I argue about Kemet. There's about 5 to 7 subtopics that I use in my consistent argument with so-called Arabs and Caucasians to prove that the ancient Comediu were black people.
Mm-hmm.
I use archaeology, anthropology. I use linguistic studies. I use the photos of the statues, figurines, wall carvings, wall paintings, those kinds of things. And I use quotes by ancient writers and their descriptions. And when I use them, like for instance, if I used is a wonderful quote by Herodotus that he wrote in his book called The Histories. It's and because he wrote 9 books. This is in book 2, and you start at section, because he didn't have it named and he didn't have it in pages, but you
Mm-hmm.
start in section 120. You can start 120 to 124, and in those 4 sections, he lays out what the ancient committee would look like. And he had 2 words that he used. So I use the Greek terms, I give them the Greek terms, and then I give them the definitions as the dictionary has provided them. And it always ties them up. And they get them, they'll try, it's funny, I'm sitting at the computer laughing at them as they try through innuendo, whatever, to try to come up and say it doesn't mean that. But I already gave you the definition. I gave you the website link where if you click it, it sends you right to the definition so you can see it. So I'm consistent. So always be consistent, always study, and try to get to a point where you can memorize some of this stuff. Because I know you can't memorize it all. None of us can. But the more consistent you are in memorizing this stuff and being able to present it, the better you are at it. Like, as you can see, I only looked up the term turf. That's the only thing I had to look up. Everything else I'm saying right off the top of my mind. I'm just, because I've been doing this, as I told the sister yesterday, I became conscious when I was 20. I'm 71 years old. So I've been doing this about 51 years. So, and I've read many of the works of our great scholars multiple times. For instance, just to give you an example, and I'll tell people this, I'm consistent when I say it because it's true. I've read The Destruction of Black Civilization 8 times from cover to cover.
Wow.
And I dabble in it periodically whenever I need to do so, just to present other stuff. I've read, for instance, when I was a practicing Muslim, I read the Holy Quran itself 12 times from cover to cover.
Wow.
12 times.
Well,
So,
I mean, we're in our second iteration of your book. So this is our second go around.
Good. So I say that all that to say that you can't just, these kinds of books that we're talking about, books by Dr. Shekhar Diop, for instance, when he wrote The African Origin of Civilization, Myth and Reality, or his last great work, Civilization of Barbarism and Authentic Anthropology, or any of the books by Obanga. You got to read these books multiple times. You can't just read them once and put them down. That's the greatest weapon that our enemy has against us is our own individual and collective ignorance. And our refusal to want to open up books. We want to sit down now. Most of the younger generations want to watch YouTube videos, and they think that they can get everything from those videos. You can get a lot. I'm not saying you can't get anything, but you still have to go to the books.
Absolutely.
You got to go to the books, and you got to stop being lazy, and you got to invest in your knowledge. You got to invest financially in your knowledge. See, they think they want everything. I have the saying, young people want everything yesterday, and they want it without doing anything for it. You got to invest in your knowledge, which means when you invest in your knowledge, you're investing in yourself.
Facts. Do you want to
You're
tell
investing in
your
yourself.
listeners that they need to read?
Read. Reading will help
And
a lot.
you gotta read, and you can't take shortcuts to reading. This means that when you're reading, if you don't understand what you just read it again. Stop right there, read it again. If you need to, look the term up that is confusing you and find out what it means, and then go back and do it again. Like when I was in the 7th grade, my 7th grade teacher, I could never forget him. His name was Mr. Payne. And every day he would give us 10 vocabulary words for homework. Our home assignment was to go home, look the word up, use it in a sentence, and then come back. And so every day I had to turn in that daggone paper. And I remember saying to myself, why is he giving us all these daggone words? What is that supposed to mean? It wasn't until I came full circle again, as I was saying earlier, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, that I fully understood why that lesson was being given to me. Even though I don't know if that was his intent, but I now understood the importance. So again, be consistent. Don't take shortcuts, and try to learn all that you can. This journey that we call life is a journey that starts from the moment we are born all the way until we transition to the next existence. One of our great ancient Comitius sages said, be not arrogant because of your knowledge. And he said, seek counsel from the ignorant as well as with the wise. Notice he said, seek counsel. In other words, talk to the ignorant and the wise.
Mm-hmm.
He said, be not arrogant because of your knowledge, and seek counsel from the ignorant as well as with the wise. For the limits of knowledge in any field have never been set, and no one has ever reached them. Wisdom is rarer than emeralds, and yet it can be found among the women who gather at the grindstones. So listen to what he said. The limits of knowledge in any field have never been set. That means that knowledge in that particular field is endless.
Mm-hmm.
It's endless. And because it's endless, you as an individual should be trying to learn all you can while you're still here about that
Absolutely.
particular subject.
Absolutely. And Baba, as we turn the corner on the last segment,
Mhm.
you want to get to the name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Baba Olatunji, I'm going to shift the topic just a little bit. I'm interested in your name. Will you tell the family about your unique name and what it means to you, or what it means, and how the name Olatunji and Mwamba came to be?
Okay. The name, when I changed my name, and I changed my name legally, by the way, in 1977. I changed my name because I'd come to realize that the names that we had, which were European names, were forced upon our ancestors once they arrived here in the New World as enslaved Africans. And so what I had decided to do was that I was not going to transmit those names onto my children, and that I was going to give them African names so that they could begin the process of re-Africanizing ourselves. So I changed my name to Olatunji. My full name is Olatunji Seba Sarah Mwamba. Olatunji means honor, reawakens me. Seba means wise. Sarah means son of Ra or son of light. And Mwamba means spiritually and physically strong. And that's what my name means.
Ashe.
Ashe. Okay, so family, This is for my 8 to 12-year-olds listening. The elders, warriors, and builders today, we've walked through fire with Baba Olatunji and Baba Rasar. And I need you to hear me right now. This wasn't just a talk. This was a transmission from Baba Olatunji, from the ancestors, and from the source. And if you're between 8 and 12 years old, and adults can take note too, I want you to know you are not too young to understand truth. You are not too small to protect your mind. You are not too soft to stand strong. You are the heartbeat of the village, and the village must protect you with clarity, with courage, and with no compromise. So we find ourselves continually talking about the problem. But what about the solution? So here's what we do. We read with a focus. We teach early. We guard our spiritual clarity like it's our last breath. We build African-centered mental health circles, and we speak even when our voice shakes, because silence is not safety. Confusion is not compassion, and compromise is not culture. To my young listeners, if someone tries to confuse you, tries to touch you, tries to tell you that your body isn't sacred, tell an adult you trust. You speak up, you protect yourself and your truth. And to the adults, if you see something, do something. If you know something, teach something. And if you feel something, build something. Because us, the children, are watching, and we deserve a village that doesn't flinch. This is Reya'Sekhmet, and I walk with light, rage, healing, and boundless insight. And I vow to protect the garden, guard the gate, and keep truth sacred. Ashe.
So, Baba, is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you want to talk about? I'm just asking because we done kept you now a couple of hours, and we will always want to be respectful of your time. But is there anything that that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about?
Oh man, I just say no, not really. I think we touched on the most important, the most salient points of my book. I would encourage all people who sincerely want to know the truth to consider purchasing my book. You can go online and purchase my book at olatunji-mwamba.myshopify.com/collections/all. So I urge everybody to consider purchasing the book, and then you can read it, you can digest it, you can research what's in it, and then you can determine if you think I'm incorrect. And then we can have a discussion. The only thing I require or request that people do, if they want to say that I'm wrong or that the information in my book is incorrect, is to at least sincerely read it. Read my book, analyze my book, determine the veracity of the documentation that I present, then go get your evidence, and then come back, and then we can have a discussion.
Absolutely.
But don't do fictitious, fallacious arguments whereby you try to say you read my book when you know you haven't read it. There was two guys that went on a YouTube and tried to say that they had read my book when I knew they hadn't read it. I can tell you how I knew they hadn't read it, because everybody who buys my book has to buy it from me. So I have a list of everybody who has purchased the book. So now, if they buy the book now, yesterday I went to an event and they purchased the book. So I know who's buying my book. So they lied and said that they bought my book. When what happened was an unscrupulous individual in Baltimore took a screenshot of just 2 pages from the end of from the beginning of chapter 18 in the initial book, not this one, because I went back and addressed some other stuff, some of the stuff which he himself said. I went back and straightened that nonsense out. But anyway, what they did was took that and then tried to say that they read my book. Now, here's how I know they didn't read my book. Because you wouldn't need, they even in the video admit that they got the screenshot from this individual and they called him by name. So if you read my book, you would need a screenshot from somebody else. You would have a personal copy of my book in your own library. You would be able to show that you had the book yourself. That's why I needed a line. And this is what I mean. People are insincere. Their intention is to convince you that they've read something that they haven't read, and to now project lies, falsifications, and what have you to convince you not to even consider purchasing and reading my book. And what I hope is that people who have the wherewithal to purchase the book would at least sit down and take your time to read it. I don't care if it takes you a year to read the book. Read the book. Now, this is what I tell people. Man, that's a lot of pages, 432 pages. Yes, it is. But you can start by reading a paragraph a day.
Mm-hmm.
The saying goes, the longest journey begins with what? The first step.
That's right.
So if you take a step, if you go to work, for instance, and you take your book out at lunch, if you read a paragraph, or if you're afraid that you might have some problems at work, then when you get home, take 10 or 15 minutes and just read a paragraph. Read a paragraph. Close it up.
And we definitely read the book as a family. And you know, I was blessed to be able to communicate with you. So and we communicated by the chapter, and just to be able to read it, have our understanding of what you wrote, and then have you sit down with me and we have that clarity of what you wrote is priceless. So family, I say, not only don't just listen and hear what Baba is saying, but take action. Get out there, purchase Baba's book, and we will have the link to your book, Baba, embedded in our description when we post the video. And on that note, do you have a way for the family to show their appreciation and or donate, or some way for the family to support?
Well, the best way to support me would be to buy the book.
Understood.
I used to have well, I still do. I always had a consistent way. I said, look, our scholars, many of them, they didn't transition as super rich men or women. And what I say is this: at the least you can do, the least you could do to support scholars like myself and others, to support our work, is to buy our book and read it and encourage others to do so. It's only through this way do we get the message out there that needs to be gotten. Because for me, I was telling somebody yesterday, if I hadn't wrote this book, if I hadn't written this book myself and I read it, I would be telling people to go get this book. That's how important the topic is, one, and the information in it, two, is. This book should be in every Black household. If you sincerely want to know the truth, this is the book you need to read. Remember, and I tell people this as well, Mwalimu Burudi wrote his book, Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males, in 2003. The Irritated Genie wrote his book, War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault, in 2004. Social media primarily became a thing in 2006 to 2008, when you started seeing like Facebook and also see other social media, idioms come about. But Facebook became the primary one that everybody uses to communicate. So from 2004 until I wrote my book in December of 2020, well, when it came out in 2020, there was nothing that dealt with this subject matter. And so what you had a lot of ideas and discussions and arguments with stuff being put out there and nothing to consistently thwart it or to be presented making the argument. I began getting into arguments in 2008 and began to consistently hold the line. And I began to gather information to further hold the line and solidify the line that I was holding all the way until I decided to write my book in February of 2020 and finished it in December of 2020. And that's when it was released. I believe it was December the 12th or the 15th of December 2020. And then I went back, reassessed what I had put in there, and started adding and expanding and expounding on what was there in, I believe, October of 2021. And so this is the culmination of all of that. And it includes photos that are in color, which the first book did not have. It includes all of the photos from the first book as well as more photos this time around. So I implore all Black people of goodwill who sincerely want to know the truth. This is not about hate. I don't hate anybody, particularly our people. I just know that I want what is in the best interest of us as a race of people, both collectively as well as individually. And what I show is that the behaviors that we're discussing today, LGBTQIA+, are not in the best interest of us as a race of people collectively, and it's not in the best interest of the individual to be participating in. There's nothing good that will come of those behaviors, and we need to take a stand against it and hold the line, because when you look around the world, we are the last bastion of hope against these behaviors. We're the last bastion of hope. If they finally get us into it on a mass level, the world is doomed.
Ashe.
Barbara Sar, before we wrap up, do you want to leave the family with some final words? Because the family needs truth, accountability, and they need to stop pretending that silence is strength. So please say what needs to be said, because the family is listening.
Absolutely, Reya'Sekhmet. And check this out, family. African people must rise above the trance that they are in today, because we are in one serious, deep, disoriented, and corrosive hypnosis. And if we see this, family, don't start holding our leaders, our scholars. If we don't start holding our leaders, our scholars, one more time for the family in the back. And if we don't start holding our leaders, scholars accountable, family, especially people that practice this ill behavior and those that support its accountability, we will continue dragging our bones behind false prophets who answer to everything but what is African-centered and Ma'at. And at this point, right then, like Baba Shikari says, you're supposed to kick they ass out of any position of leadership, representation, or any other position in your society. So family, we must take responsibility for the curriculum that we feed ourselves. We must build the institutions that can hold our truth with integrity. We need institutions grounded in African-centered truth, not convenience, and damn sure not ego. And family, it cannot be with colonial framework. And I'll land my plane with this, Reya'Sekhmet. The time for insubstantial inspiration is over, family. We need warrior scholars, strong institutions. We need leaders whose allegiance is to the people first, last, and always. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then good. That's the discomfort that precedes clarity. That's the initiation you've been avoiding. Unity, family.
Did you hear that, family? Kick these cells out.
Baba Mecca Imhotep says right knowledge corrects wrong behavior, but you can't correct what you haven't researched. So family, on the J&J-Life podcast, we educate, empower, and inspire people of African descent to not only become African-centered, but being African-centered with intention. I understand that correcting misbehavior begins with realigning thought. So what you do for yourself, what you allow others to do to you, and what you do to others all reflect about what you believe about yourself. But that self-concept is shaped by what you've been taught about yourself. And what you've been taught about yourself is shaped by what you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. As the wisdom goes, when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you control the circumference of his actions. A mind cannot do or teach what it does not know. And at the Mu Institute for Ancestral Learning, we restore knowing. So before you disagree, do your homework. Because what I've shared isn't based on opinion, it's based on primary sources. African-centered scholarship and decades of suppressed truth. We are not here to be provocative. We are here to be precise. But sometimes precision sounds like rebellion when you've been raised on revision. And now that you guys know a little more about Baba Olatunji and Mwamba, support Baba on all social media platforms. Purchase his books. Don't take our word for none of this information we provide today. Do your research. Now let's get to work.
Ashe.
Ashe.
There you guys have it, family. Please absolutely devour the like button and subscribe.
Educate yourself, family. Sacrifice and pay the price. Unity.
Unity.
Yes, sir.
Next time, stay centered, stay clear, and stay ready. Abifai Hodie, Reya'Sekhmet is out.
Abibi Fahodie.
Bibi Fahodie. You know, let's give the Bible the
Black Power.
Peace and love is the key. Ra represents the essence of truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, and arrangement, reciprocity, and righteousness.
J&J-Life podcast. The J&J-Life podcast was created to give the family a place and platform to embrace their spiritual awakening and consciousness. J&J-Life is dedicated to showcasing the beauty of our culture, educating our people and those that want to learn this work.
Smash that like button. Peace and love is Nikki.